Welcome to this e-module. This program is designed for the students of Bachelor of Science 3rd year in the subject of Botany in semester 6, course code BOC 108, course title Cytogenetics and Plant Breeding. The title of this unit is Inbreeding Depression and Heterosis. Module name Inbreeding Depression and its application. I am Ms. Emma Fernandez, Assistant Professor in Tempe College of Arts and Science, Miramar, Goa. In this module, we will see the introduction of inbreeding depression, some of the work done by various scientists on inbreeding depression, degree of inbreeding depression, and some practical applications of inbreeding. At the end of this module, the student will define inbreeding depression, recognize the work done by various scientists on inbreeding depression, classify the degree of inbreeding depression, and explain the applications of inbreeding. The cross-pollinator species are highly heterozygous, and these plants lose their increased vigor and other superior qualities if selfing or inbreeding is allowed in them. Now let us learn about the definition of two terms, inbreeding and outbreeding. Inbreeding is the term given for the mating between genetically related individuals, that is, brother-sister mating or sib mating. On the other hand, we have outbreeding, which is nothing but the mating between the individuals of different genetic constitution. The reduction in growth, vigor, and fertility due to inbreeding is referred to as inbreeding depression. Inbreeding reduces heterozygosity and leads to homozygosity in the progeny. There is a distinct correlation between the homozygosity and degree of inbreeding. Selfing reduces the heterozygosity by a factor of half in each generation, and the degrees of inbreeding increases in the same proportion. Now let us see some of the work done by various scientists on inbreeding depression. Kohlreuter conducted his hybridization experiments on nicotiana, that is, tobacco. He suggested that the vigor of hybrid is related to the degree of genetic dissimilarity of parents, and hybrid vigor is of particular significance in evolution. It was Darwin who published the account of his experiment on self and cross-pollination in maize. He concluded that the progeny obtained from self-fertilization is weaker than those derived from outcrossing or cross-fertilization. Other scientists like E.M. East in 1906 and G.H. Schull in 1909 studied the effects of inbreeding in maize for 30 generations independently. They found that the yielding ability in these lines finally reduced to 1/3 of the open pollinated variety from which these samples were derived. They drew the following conclusions. A number of lethal and subvital types appear in early generations of selfing. The material rapidly separates into distinct lines which become increasingly uniform for differences in various morphological and functional characteristics. Many of the lines decrease in vigor and fecundity until they cannot be maintained even under the most favorable culture conditions. Lastly, the lines that survive show a general decline in size and vigor. Now let us see the degree of inbreeding depression. The degree of inbreeding response differs in different species and also by range from very high to very low or 0. Accordingly, we can categorize the degree of inbreeding depression into 4 types. High inbreeding depression, moderate inbreeding depression, very low inbreeding depression, and no inbreeding depression. Now let us discuss each of these categories in detail. High inbreeding depression. In some plants, the loss in vigor and fertility due to inbreeding is so great that a very few lines survive after 3 to 4 generations of inbreeding. They show greatly reduced yield, generally less than 25% of open pollinated varieties. Open pollination is pollination which occurs by wind, insect, birds and humans. Plants which show high inbreeding depressions are alfalfa and carrot. Moderate inbreeding depression. In this, selfing of progeny results in many weak, lethal or sublethal types in population, which are eliminated, but a good proportion of population can be maintained under self-pollination. Examples of plants showing moderate inbreeding depression are jowar and bajra. Very low inbreeding depression. Some plants show very little loss in vigor and fertility due to inbreeding, and some of the inbred lines yield as much as their open pollinated parent varieties. Example, rye and sunflower. No inbreeding depression. The self-pollinated species do not show inbreeding depression, although they show some degree of hybrid vigor or heterosis. Now let us learn about some practical applications of inbreeding. In a heterozygous individual, that is an individual having different forms of alleles or genes, the harmful recessive alleles remain masked by their normal dominant alleles. If a heterozygous individual undergoes inbreeding for various generations, there will be equal chances for dominant as well as recessive alleles to express. But in homozygous condition, recessive alleles will be able to express their deleterious phenotypic effects on an individual. On the other hand, we have the homozygosity for dominant alleles which has equal opportunity to express their beneficial phenotypic effects on inbred races. And therefore, we sometimes say that inbreeding is boon or bane. Inbreeding causes homozygosity of deleterious recessive genes which may result in defective phenotype. Under this, we have the example, in human society, the religious ethics unknowingly and moral social norms consciously have condemned and banned the marriage of brothers and sisters. Further, the plant breeders and animal breeders to avoid inbreeding in the individuals due to this particular reason. Secondly, the inbreeding results in homozygosity of dominant allele. It is a best means of mating among hermaphrodites, meaning a bisexual individual, and self-pollinating plant species of several families. The animal breeder employed the inbreeding to produce best races of horses, dogs, bulls, cattle, etc. Examples: the modern race horses are all descendants of 3 Arabian stallions. Also, we know merino sheep, which is widely known for its fine wool production. These are my references. Thank you.